You see. Very good. So it's recording now.
Okay.
And how do you feel? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good too. I'm back home in the Black Forest and there's no sun. So that's kind of unusual. Normally here in the south of Germany, it's always sunny. So I'm kind of a bit irritated because of the weather.
Well, there's no sun in Amsterdam either, but it's kind of like the usual. So,
okay. So you are in Amsterdam right now?
Yes, I'm in Amsterdam.
I love your setting, Tine. I love everything. It's kind of your background is kind of a journey in itself. So what can we see? What do you have there in your home?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it. So actually, yeah, you see my bike, obviously, which you need in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Then a surfboard over here from a brand I find really cool from the south of France. This surfboard is out of Cork, so it's like a sustainable surfboard brand, and they're experimenting with like sustainable materials. And and there's a picture of Venice Beach. I call California somewhat like one home. And you see here obviously a picture of Amsterdam that I took at some point and put it on canvas. And this chair, actually, you see it here?
Yeah.
It's I had a job next to studying at like dinner shows in Breda. And you got like paid per evening. Practically it was like like an hour contract, so not like you just do it as a side job. And then I saw this chair, and it was my last night before I actually left Breda, before I left the city. And I saw this chair and I was like, instead of paying me, can I get this chair for tonight? I saw it was an old theater, and it was like standing in one of the corners behind the curtain, and I fell in love with it. And that was like, that's like already also like 6-7 years ago, I think. So yeah, I love it. And obviously I painted on the wall, which my boyfriend was always freaking out because it's a rental.
So it says waves and sand and something that is hidden. What's the last word?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Oh, it's very secret. And the other one is walk on the wild side.
Yeah.
Which I love very much.
Yeah, and to me it has a lot to do, like you go your way, you stay close to yourself. And I also always call it, going on the wild side when I travel inwardly. So like with going on meditation, doing meditation and such.
Okay, interesting. So the wild side inside of you, while looking for the calm as well in the outside, maybe. Yeah, we're going to deep dive a bit more. Welcome, Tine Bieber. I'm so glad to talk to you, to deep dive. We've been talking to each other for a year now. It's a year ago that we met. And I was immediately fascinated by you and by your presence and your aura and your friendliness and your welcoming charm, because I attended a meetup organized by NRG Flow last year in October. And with this meetup, a lot of things started, and a great learning journey for me started as well. And Tine has taken a big part in that learning journey, as we kept in touch and we deep dive a lot. And I love to have you here, Tine Bieber. Yeah, it's amazing, and I'm very curious what will evolve. We are both a bit excited. We realized that we both like, whoa, we've been talking so often, and now it's recorded, it's getting official. We're doing a podcast, and she is a podcaster herself, so she has a podcast. Or maybe you want to tell a bit about yourself. I'm curious, and the audience is for sure very curious to get to know you, as we now got to know a bit of your home, which also tells a lot about you and your wildness and your adventurous explorer and personality, as I know you. And maybe you want to say some words about yourself.
First, thank you so much, Sara, for having me. And it touches me deeply, and it feels like we know each other for like much longer than just a year. It's just a year.
Yeah, already a year. Yeah, crazy.
But it feels like we've been knowing each other for a really long time. And
yeah, there was a quick connection, right? When we met. I mean, we were the Germans. You realized, oh, she's a German too. Wow, where are you from? So that's the first. Okay. But I felt there was something else as well. So it's a mutual interest of getting to know each other a bit deeper.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and as you said, like the meetup organized out of NRG Flow, it's one of the things that I'm doing within NRG Flow, and I've been on quite a journey and quite a ride with this organization, as you know. And
how long are you with them now?
It's almost 4 years. So pretty much 4 years ago, I started initial conversations with them to to start. And at that point, I couldn't have imagined what kind of a wild ride that would be and what kind of part I would take in it.
It fits your painting on the wall.
It does. No, it definitely does, because this journey, it introduced me to things like, the future of work, new ways of working. And I always believed, and there must be a different kind of way of doing things. And myself, I have a business administration background, a bachelor's and master's. And I was one of these students who, I question everything. I was like, oh, Jesus. Yeah, and I looked at models and I was like, okay, but how do you actually, live these things, and how does it feel also? And how is it realistic? And the biggest question of all that came up for me was, it was management schools, and even though it feels like, it was just a couple of years ago, it was a couple of years ago that I graduated, but it was like, purpose equals profit, and we're still like taught how to build up profitable organizations, how to be leaders who can push this kind of profitability. And I was like, wait a minute, in what kind of century are we actually living in that we can still, say that purpose equals profit? And then for me, a whole journey started in also diving deeper, not like in I think it was more like in an unconscious way. And but I started questioning also the things I did in my job afterwards, how I interacted with people and my surrounding. Because if you're studying at a school like that, you have a lot of people around you, and you're being introduced to organizations who are kind of like representing the same culture as you're also learning at school. And also, obviously, growing up in Germany. So I grew up in Germany, and it's there was always this kind of vibe of competition, and come on, you can be better than that. And I mean, obviously, we are measured like that in our educational system and such, and bringing that into the business world. And I thought, no, there must be a different way of doing stuff. And then I met the founder of NRG Flow, Raema, and our first conversation, which was my how's it called? Like my first job interview. We don't call it job interview anymore. That's why I was looking for the word.
How do you call it? Because there's also discussion of how could you change the language about the whole recruiting.
I mean,
system.
Our first conversation is just, it's connecting. It's connecting, and we actually call the whole process from, it's like a sign-up process, we call it, but now we go more into the direction of explorational process, because
I like that.
Yeah, it's exploring a partnership of of you starting with these people in this context, and it's much more than just an employer-employee relationship.
And it sounds more with that naming, or with that, it sounds more like you are on an eye level, rather than, you are applying for a job and I need to be or behave in such and such way to be able to get the job. I always tell clients or friends who are in this process to also look at that way, use that perspective, that they also are applying to you. You are in that moment also checking, is that the place where I want to work, where I would feel that my energy is welcome, that my personality is welcome, and that I can contribute to something bigger. So it's kind of, I like that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like a more mature, I think, setting. So it's not, we're going away from this parent-child, kind of dynamic. And the first conversation I had with Raema, it lasted, I'm not kidding, 4.5 or 5 hours. I mean, we're both big talkers, but
yeah, you told me, yeah.
But yeah, it was so amazing. Like, we were just like talking about everything, but it was a lot about what are our individual stories, what's our background, how are our beliefs, how do we stand in the world, how do we look at life, and what's important for us. And that, I mean, obviously it was the initial conversation of a journey that I would have never dreamt of, and which has completely changed my perspective on work, on life, and which is really, making my wildest dreams come true in terms of, we don't have to separate, yourself from work or yourself from anything. It's just like how you want to show up in the world, and through what kind of channels do you want to make impact.
It sounds like at that point, the company was called NRG
Circles. Yeah.
Circles. And at that point, so 4 years ago, Raema, as the founder, or at that time he was the CEO still, or how was that kind of? He was also in the transmission of, okay, who do we want to be? Who do we want to work with? What should the company look like? Or what was it when you ended? What role did you apply for? It's kind of I'm using this terms to make the shift a bit clearer. And you ended up having a 4 to 5 hour conversation about getting really deep. So where was the company at that time?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I do think that time was, as you say, it was like we were in a transition phase. So the conversation we were having was also focused a bit around, okay, what are your skills and talents, obviously, and what gives you energy and whatnot. And at that time, I was already able to say, okay, I like communication, I like, doing work with people, and my belief system around hierarchies and how teams can work. And I could say, I'm not a big fan of numbers. So, but that was practically it in terms of, knowing myself, let's say. And at that time, what happened is, so I came into a very interesting time, because Raema already made the decision with the other shareholder, Robert, at that time, that they wanted to set up an organization in a very different way in terms of structure. So they said, well, Raema had a lot of experience also already before in the oil and gas industry. So we are in oil and gas, which is like,
important information still missing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
what do they do? What do they do? Can you explain it just quickly? So it's about valves, right? Like this.
Yeah, that's right.
Connecting. Okay. Yeah.
So as a tangible product, breaking it down to that, it is valves, and it's a matter of, so how I'm explaining it, because we are a highly purpose-driven organization. So this whole journey of starting with self-management and making personal development first priority at our organization also brought big topics on the table, like purpose, individual purpose, organizational purpose. And also that obviously changed our perspective, towards our product, towards what we want to offer in the market, and how we are using this to making a positive impact in the world. And now you can obviously say, well, oil and gas, Tine, hello, what are you doing then in there, right? And
my first thought when I was in the Netherlands and I was looking for meetups and organizations that are working in a different way. So that was kind of my research question, or what I wanted to learn about. And I found you, and I was like, okay, you're in the middle of nowhere. Is it kind of worth it to go there? And it's like Oliver Wolf. So they're into walls. So what's that? What do they do? And it's like, okay. interesting. And they are going to talk about their holacracy journey. Oh, even more interesting. So I was very intrigued in a way, and it was a bit contradictory, and I like those kind of things to dig deeper in it. So that was the decision made. I wanna get to know you, and I want to get to know this oil and gas industry, being sustainable, oil and gas industry, you know, and purpose driven. And I was like, okay, I know that from really the social startups, or, you know, this big, and then I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let's go and listen and learn. And that was pretty amazing to get to know you. Sorry, now that was just my squeeze.
No, but I mean, this is a really valid point, because how I look at the world is that, you know, transformation and change starts with ourselves. And I like to, you know, look back on the last 4 years and seeing how we changed also as a group of people, and how we were growing in points like self-awareness, self-love, and self-accountability, which actually makes it possible, you know, like to embrace this kind of complexity and interdependence from each other. And what we're doing with that is, you know, a lot of times we are very separate so we do our job, and then we have like this beautiful family at home, or, you know, so it's like there's like this big gap between things, and we don't dare to integrate it because it's two separate things, right? And it's like the same with so we are working on, you know, for example, green energy solutions, but please not with oil and gas, because they're, you know, like there's like this a bit black and white and separate thinking. Mm-hmm. So what I found out is, if we start with ourselves and kind of like try to integrate that, it's like the same, you know, we have days we are very triggered or whatsoever, and we just face it, right? And we look at it and we make it part of ourselves. We are creating wholeness. So if we start with ourselves, we are bringing this kind of healing into our organization, and with that in industry, and with that in the world. And obviously industries like oil and gas, they need healing the most, because they lost its purpose, they lost its compassion and love for themselves, you know. So kind of like getting a different kind of perspective on things, and with that breaking a cycle. That's in essence what I believe in, and what we as a group also do, starting with ourselves, and with that practically, you know, changing a whole culture from the inside out. And at the same time, there's initiatives outside of the industry, and at some point we're going to cross ways and integrate all that. And with that, I believe we can speed up this whole transformation towards a sustainable future, that, you know, a future vision that is worthwhile to live for, embracing all stakeholders, in particular, you know, our mother nature. You know, we share this vision, like, so how can we work on our different kind of path to go there together?
I'm so curious to go back a bit in time. And I mean, what you tell now is build up of a huge journey, like a personal, your personal journey, which you shared, and which goes very deep. And then you had the collective, and you as a group. And what role do you think plays Raima in this transformational journey, as being a CEO that at that point deep dived into and also started his own journey, being in the oil and gas industry, and have this conscious level, or this mindset that is shifting in a way, which you share now? Because, you know, when you think of the business world and of profit and of being a CEO, being a leader, it comes up this images you have, and the language pops up of profit, of deliver, of the business impact you have to create. And now you telling this transformation and protecting the mother nature, being in the oil and gas industry, that sounds so interesting. And it started with who, with what? Is there anything what you think that made the shift? That was is Raima sharing did he have an awakening, or what do you think made it like that someone came up by deciding we're going to change that? I want to work differently. I want to structure my company differently. I want to hire people that share my vision, that follow the purpose of our, and just what it sounds so cool, but how was that how was that possible?
I think for Raema, and I mean, like, obviously he should probably tell the story himself, because I only have like one perspective on it.
Yeah.
But as an observer of his, journey as well, and the way we have been going together, when I met Raema, he was kind of like questioning also a lot of things that were happening in the industry and in the business world actually in general. And one of the biggest ones, I think, that he saw the opportunity to change was hierarchies. And the experience he made was that he would have to make decisions for, let's say 3 management layers underneath him. And he was like, I'm not the expert in that, but why would I put my signature on that paper? It doesn't make any sense. And as more as he was climbing practically to the top in his late 80s, in his late 20s, he discovered for himself that obviously, he got a bit more, how's it called? Resistance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Resistance from like management levels above, and it was very, very much structured and a lot of, black and white approaches in terms of regulations and just make this decision or you are out, things like that. Mm-hmm. Pretty radical. And at some point he decided, okay, then it doesn't make me happy. I find it really, not efficient, things, how they're been done. And how can we do it better? And then he went on an explorational journey of what is out there, that we can actually build an organization that embraces wholeness, that embraces talent and skills and unleashes potential of all of us. And then he came across holacracy. And that was also the starting point, roughly 4 years ago now. In October, it was 4 years, mm-hmm. And implemented holacracy, and with the purpose of bringing wholeness into the organization. And that was, now looking back, it was the complete right thing, because what he practically, I think he wasn't aware at that point what kind of impact it can have today. But what happened then is that we started out with holacracy, which was a huge trial and error, because it's not that there's too many companies out there practicing it, or a lot of them also, made a decision of this is not for us. And I understand, because holacracy it's not a ready to take system. I mean, it brings a structure, but you need to develop it further and you need to customize it for yourself. And I mean, we're one of the cases, I would say it worked out well, but, we had to build on it for ourselves too. So one thing I think that we really learned is that we're really addressing all tensions that are coming up. There's no tensions been ignored, and that can be very painful and exhausting mm-hmm. at times, right? But that also was really speeding up the whole development of individuals and the organization that brought us to this huge purpose together, transforming.
How many are you right now? At the time, a year ago, you were 14 people, I remember.
And now we are 20 people okay. from 8 different countries.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I was so there are so many different topics I want to deep dive in, and we talked about the holacracy topic, and also that we're gonna want to have a bit of a critical insight on it as well. And I have some questions for you regarding the holacracy topic, but regarding the wholeness, talking about wholeness, what does wholeness mean to you as Tine, but also to you in the context of energy flow, this wholeness, term of wholeness, to make someone, or like this, to make it whole.
It's an interesting one, because I haven't really thought about the word itself mm-hmm. too much, but
or the feeling or the picture maybe that it's transmitting it, or what you feel, the cultural aspect of it, or
what I see is that you are showing up as a whole person. Like, that sounds really abstract, but what I mean is, so I have an example actually, because mm-hmm. there was also a reason there was a point in time in my previous organization where I made a commitment to myself saying, you know, I want to show up in the world as me, as a human being, as, you know, one, not having to make like difference between showing up as roles in organization, or there I'm showing up different than there. I just want to be that and feel joy and happy, and that not just, you know, in like a current stage, but as a state you are in. And the trigger was a conversation I had with a former colleague who told me on the hallway. She was like, Tine, obviously I'm showing up here just in a role because the rest needs to stay at home. Nobody cares about it here, and it shouldn't be here. So I'm a different person at home than here. And she said it literally. And that touched me so deeply, and it inspired me so deeply that there must be different ways to do things, because it feels so, you know, such a separate kind of approach.
I had interesting conversations with a friend of mine who exactly likes that. So,
but there's a difference.
Likes it to be in a role. The role is protecting her, and she doesn't want to be the whole authentic herself in the business world, because she protects her true whole self, which is interesting. We talk about it a lot, and because I'm like you, I also want to show up as I am. I don't want to wear things I don't feel comfortable. First of all, that's the first discussion. If you have to, you know, wear clothes you're not feeling comfortable with, but the business world demands it, or this kind of stuff. And for her, it's rather a role to protect her being and to be the professional herself, which I found interesting as well. So
it is
not showing up as the true authentic you, because there is a difference, and she has her angle of protecting it.
Yeah, and if you say protecting, there might be a fear behind it, right? And I think this is also perfectly, you know, fine and nice, because we are not in a linear process, right? When we are all on different kind of journeys. So maybe she is gonna get to a point at someday and will say, now I want to do it differently. And but I think what I've been learning at NRG Flow, one of the first things when we had this structural shift from hierarchy to self-management was there is like the so-called role and soul division within holacracy. And, you know, at that time I was like writing my master thesis about it, and I was like, you know, diving into it, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. You know, me like, why, you know, emotional connections and I want to be there as a person. What are you telling me here? And now looking.
Can you share quickly what does that mean for those who haven't heard the podcast episode before and who were not that into holacracy? So the role and soul division, which I found super interesting as well, and I got a bit of a brain freeze around it, imagining it, if that would really work, you know, imagining myself as showing up as I'm Sara, but I'm now in my role as a people lead, and that's my duty to tell you in your role as your brand lead, and to finally move your ass because we need to get this going. That wouldn't say that, I know, but I was like, okay, and you know, like this, yeah. But you explain it better.
But I mean, like in reality, obviously, if you're trying it out and you're, you know, in the beginning time, you do stuff like that, right? So obviously, but yeah, it is a very interesting topic, because what it says is holacracy is practically you organize around work and not people. And what the idea behind this is that you're kind of like getting rid of politics and, you know, like this kind of stuff that is also happening in organization, which means you're not getting too attached to a role, and it leaves it dynamic and looks at an organization as a living organism to you know, adapt quickly to changes and such. And I said, it sounds really abstract, a role and soul division. So in practice, as you say, it kind of like works this way. So I'm like in my brand building role, and I'm having a project request to you, and then I just like saying, okay, project request to you in your role, I don't know, text writer, and that's it. So it sounds really cold, right? And at the same time, if you give feedback from role to role, you would theoretically, you would say, I don't take it personal because you're just talking to me in my role. So this is one of the things I think which is most discussed, because people, souls, are fulfilling these roles, right? So in theory, this is a bit crazy, I would say, or I don't know how to express it, or that's how I felt about it at some point. But if you dive deeper into it and explore it a bit deeper, it can be very, very freeing up. And what I learned from this is actually that I learned, you know, I said before, I mentioned before this topic around not being good enough. Like, you know, getting back to that a lot of times in my life, or looking for, you know, getting in a do mode to get recognition to what I'm doing, to kind of like prove that you can be here.
Which you connected a bit to the German competitional culture. Okay.
Yes, and I think it's really anchored in Western society to a certain extent. And what I kind of like take out of this role and soul division was that I actually learned just, you know, I don't know if learning is the right word, or discovering for myself. It's a deeper exploration to say, you know what, I'm showing up in the world and I'm good enough without, you know, having roles that I need to fulfill and do. So I'm also doing these roles, I'm fulfilling them, but I don't need to have like this kind of recognition to it, for it, right? So you're showing up in the world, you feel good enough, and then you're not getting attached to roles. And this sounds way easier than it is in practice, because it was just like, it's, you know, personal development. It's a lot of focus on finding out who you are, what you need. It's doing work around that topic, and it needs a certain awareness and consciousness level to, I think, also live that. And it's not like that I'm in this state all the time, right? This is not reality, because we have days that is okay, and we have days we're easily triggered, you know. So
I had a conversation with a wonderful leader, and she shared that in her organization, and she highlighted that it seems paradox, but they are demanding or asking, and they have this culture of belonging, that they ask their employees to share everything that is happening at home, to bring it at work, to share it at work, to be able to show up as you are in your state of being. And what you said, meaning fragile, meaning worried, anxious, or having to deal with a sick child at home, or caring for your parents, or having I think a lot of people are dealing with depression nowadays, or being sick, have a severe sickness, and bringing that to work and sharing that in a safe environment, in a culture where you've been heard and you can place it, and not, you know, have this inner conflict of not being there fully present, because there are things in your life going on, because you separated quite harshly still. And I found that very interesting. And it was a whole like a big corporate. So it was not a small company where there is a familiar atmosphere. It was a big corporate, and they want to have this sense of belonging and inclusive culture where people can share everything that is bothering them at home. You may call that the tensions being addressed in holacracy, maybe. I don't know if this is, or it's rather another level of the tensions, maybe. But I found that very cool, and that made me think a lot about that and how I would.
I mean, I find it I find it a nice way to go about stuff, to the point when it's not getting to, you know, like pushing things, because everybody has a different speed. But obviously belonging and meaning are like I think those are the two essential things you get down to, depending on what kind of state of your life you're in. But what we figured out is that the switch to holacracy, it invited us to go more inwardly. And then we actually, because holacracy doesn't give that space, this people space, it doesn't provide it from the system how it's built right now. So as said, it's not, you know, a recipe that is done, but you have to develop it further. So what we did is we build up a people context, and this people context obviously is the foundation of everything what we do. Because it's about living our interdependence as human beings and taking care of each other. So in fact, in our context, things like that are coming up. They have been there from the first day that I started at and with NRG Flow, and it's still lived. And the difference is just that we make a difference now in terms of saying, okay, now we are interacting in the people context, and we take this time as tribe members to be. I'm listening to you out of Tine now, and we're interacting out of that. And in the enterprise context, we are getting our work done that is bringing us, you know, closer to our purpose of the organization.
And how do I know in which context you are in and I am in right now? So how is that addressed?
It's actually
through holacracy, or do I choose? I do want to be in the people context because that's what's troubling me and what I want to talk to you about, or how does it look like in practice?
Yeah, and in practice, it is, it's indeed like this, that we have, you know, in holacracy, we use an operating system that is called ClassRock. So we have a ClassRock environment for the enterprise as well as for the people context, and the same as in Slack. And the point is, and we can switch really quickly from the one to the other. And obviously we have organized tribe time that we're spending time with each other, with like connecting sessions. We have feed forward processes, which is happening in the people context. We are now—
I like the feed forward term as well.
Yeah.
I like it better than feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also in this kind of context, I don't want to go too deep into that, like the impact dashboard that I've been developing around, like we are showing up in the world as a soul, which is like one context we can be in, like with family, friends, community, and we can still make impact on our environment, society, and economy. And the same we can also live through an organizational context, like in this case now NRG Flow, and we might not make the same impact there than in our private context, which is cool too. It's just information. So this is how we deal with it also in our people context. So we support each other on which way you ever want to be. So if people want to explore new kind of projects outside of NRG Flow, please do. I'm here to help you. And we go even that far now that we are exploring together things like insurances. And I mean, like it's in the Netherlands, you have like brood funds, you know, it's like it's a bread fund. It's a bit weird, but we're looking at what do we need and how can we support each other on every level. So financial level, if somebody's getting pregnant and you get like a certain amount of money, but you might need more. So let's have, you know, together a fund to organize that, or different kind of skills and interests we want to explore together, and just to be there for each other. Purpose is a big topic in there, that we revisit our individual purposes in this context as well, our values.
Yeah, maybe let's connect there, because I attended a webinar you offered on your holacracy journey as well, and I remember and I had been visiting you, and I had gotten to know you and learned about your journey. And still after the webinar, I was confused, because it sounded a bit like, if I may say that, it sounded a bit to me as a sect. And you are now using the word tribes and using this powerful big words. And I'm a very pragmatic person, and I'm a very critic person, and I like to deep dive. And if someone is like blowing up and all the, you know, the buzzword talk we have within the new work bubble and everything, so I'm a bit like that. And I remember that I felt a bit like, okay, well, that sounds on one hand so cool and so fascinating, and you realized and you felt that you've been through a hell of a journey. I don't know, like you really realized it from the way you've been talking and interacting with each other. And on the other hand, it felt so, how do I describe it? It was a bit for me too, I couldn't grab it enough.
Like disconnected.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I felt a bit disconnected. Like, okay, they're doing their own thing. They're a small company. They have a cool, they did the power shift, which I would be curious to also get it explained from you, because I did not manage and I didn't feel, like capable to explain that, and you experienced that. And they have this person and this people thriving and believing it and found their purpose. They had trainings and everything, but I was like, okay, but if a company wants to use the holacracy, gets the training, and then what? As you mentioned, it's not a recipe, and you realize that this whole mindset shift, perspective change. How can you start with that? What is kind of it is a journey. I think it's just that. It's the journey and it's try and error. That's what I learned from you. But how to make it a bit more approachable and not, oh God, they are meditating at work. I think this is changing. The meditation, it's not hocus pocus. It's it's what gives you what gives you energy, but to make it a bit more tangible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, if we can just like, I mean, I've been also working in other companies, as I mentioned to you, and it's always kind of like the same problems, the same challenges, which is around, I cannot adapt quickly enough to the changes around the organization in the world. I have lacking employee commitment, engagement. I mean, we all know Gallup's research about 85% of employees are disengaged in 155 countries around the globe. We have an increasing depression rate and, sick leaves and all these kind of points. So what, I mean, like I would say the ingredient to all of that is a healthy being, like literally body, mind, and soul of the person who is in this kind of system of an organization. And this is what we found out where it all starts. And I mean, obviously, when I say, we take care of each other in terms of, the people context, we support each other's on its way, is like what I do with friends too, right? So it's just like saying this kind of, to me, this is one of the safest, or maybe the safest environment to be in, to try myself out and to explore myself further. And what was your question? Mindset shift.
Also, in my head, if someone would analyze our head, I think it would be like we're painting such a colorful picture. I'm with you and your iPad. We have so many things to tackle. It's about this mindset shift, and I mean, in the pre-talk we talked about that it's kind of your passion, mindset, purpose, and your own personal journey. And we also exchanged our personal journeys a lot, and going very deeply and feeling safe and building a connection. But how to make sure, because that's kind of what we need. We are even more disconnected, like in right now. I mean, we are more and more connected online, but how to make sure that we get that connection and the interdependence you are right now in this context of COVID and in this context of the more and more complex world. And I think what I experienced and learned from you, and also from my time in the Netherlands, that it's different there from the way they work with each other, like the organizational context and the way that people encounter or engage with each other is a bit different and a bit more close than in Germany, and
oh, you mean like close and it's more open, actually, like more open.
Yeah, and a bit more joyful, a bit more easygoing. You also talked about joy being a big aspect of not being stressed. I feel like in Germany it's always showing up stressed and being stressed and sharing loudly. I have so many meetings, and then I'm always like, oh, you know, or you this kind of where's the joy around it?
If you're not saying you're stressed, then you
don't work.
You don't work. How are you contributing to society?
Yeah.
As you're saying, I think that we're entering a new paradigm of how to do business and how to set up organizations. And if we look at our challenges in the world, I mean, we need to kind of act, right? I mean, there needs to be somewhat like a transformation. And I think in particular this year showed us an increasing level of awareness and an increasing level of consciousness of our society. We had like the Black Lives Matter movement, things that have been addressed, but just like in really smaller system, and they weren't that loud yet. And now it's there. The contrast that this year showed us, you cannot ignore it anymore, right? So how do we respond to that also as organizations? And we live in the world that is very fast moving. And what we decided to do is we look at our organization as a living organism, because it consists of you and me. We are human beings. We're extremely complex. You need different kind of things, to unleash your full potential and to make impact in the world than I do. And how do you create a system that is embracing this kind of complexity? And when we talk about mindset shift, and I mean, first of all, we have an increasing level of consciousness and awareness going around our society. And I believe if we have the tipping point of 20%, that we can make this 80% impact actually of change.
How do you know that it's 20% and that 80% is needed? How do you measure that?
No, it's like the rule of Pareto. And I think like if we get this, it's like, yes, tipping point. And
okay.
And I mean, like, we know now how impact works. The world was taught how impact works through COVID-19, and it starts with one, and then it spreads. And now we also see, like, obviously in our generation C, generation Y, you and me, we look for more. We want more purpose. We want more meaning, belonging. We just want to live. And obviously in knowing and appreciating what is there and what the generations before us, built. And looking at our organization, how this mindset shift worked was that first we had the structural shift, which was going from hierarchy to self-management, which invited us to, to dive more into ourselves, to kind of like, do personal development, to unlearn certain habits, and to just, go out there and to discover, like for pretty much all of us, the question got really urgent around, why am I here for? The purpose question, the biggest question of all. And it came out of this kind of like process of, perspective change. We're so, as a society, majorly externally driven, right? With kind of like very influenced by things, or you do this kind of career, you earn this kind of much money, and then you're going to be successful, and all these kind of things that we sometimes forget about. Who are we actually, and what do we really want in the world? And I think a lot of people are asking this question to themselves this year. Especially now, because it goes back to the core essence as we are as human beings. And this is the question we also ask ourselves. And then we said, well, we came together here in the oil and gas industry at the source of an industry that needs somewhat like, different approaches and, a different kind of purpose and a different kind of being with each other and more co-creation and collaboration. So how can we change this culture from the inside out? And that created a big mindset shift for a lot of us. And I mean, we even went to a point that we also do this legal shift, right? That everybody of our organization can be a shareholder of our organization. That's now the third point that we went, a very organic journey of evolvement, actually.
I'm just referring, my head is spinning around, okay, when you talk about this process and the perspective you have, and also the inner journey and the time and space you received working in this company that decided together to give this room for your personal development and journey. Because a lot of people are frustrated at work because they don't even get time and money and room to develop themselves, to take time to process and reflect on things they have been working on or experiencing, because this is not seen yet in the profit with the profit classes, you know. How can we, I mean, you are a role model and you are an example, and I'm happy to share and spread as wide as possible so that people get in touch with you and learn from you. And what I appreciate so much about you, that you share that so transparently and so caring and really open, you know, without any disclosure or without being disguised about it and ashamed, you know, also about your failures, and having more of this open vulnerability, which I would love in the business context, where we do not have to hide or disguise that we are kind of trouble or that we failed. But it clashes still with this old, you know, we have to make a profit, and it doesn't, you are here to work, so work.
Yeah.
And it's not time to be like a how do you call it, like a group therapy session or something with your inner work, you know, that therefore you can do that with a coach or with a therapist, but outside, not here, because here the work needs to be done. I'm now very,
I know
now they're taking over this part to make it a bit more clear, the different levels and how to make sure that, I mean, we are evolving in that, what you meant with the generation, that we are demanding for more, that this time is showing us that it's so fragile. We do not know what's going to happen next year. It's so fragile, so complex, and people are longing for connectiveness and for this purpose and finding what do we want, what do I want. But
finding peace also and freedom in actually dealing with the uncertainty, right? This is also a big thing that we learned this year. And I mean, honestly, there's like some ground rules you also learn in business school, which is like an increasing level of satisfaction of employees increases your level of satisfaction, level of your customers, which in return increases your retention rate of customer, which in return increases your turnover. So we have, you know, like the facts there. So how do you do that if at the same point 85% of employees are disengaged, and even a certain percentage of that is kind of like rebelling to be of contribution with this organization. And I think that more and more people are also making the choice, obviously, now, where do I want to work? Where do I want to be? How do I want to, like, valuing time and energy being spent that they could also, you know, put somewhere else, obviously. And I think out of business perspective, it's like, it's so logical, you know, like you can bring it back to numbers, you can ground it in numbers, but it's habits. And it's like this starting with yourself, because if you are also, for example, you're transforming an organization from a hierarchical structure to a self-management structure, how do you feel as, you know, somebody of maybe a generation that was used to climbing the ladder because that was the only thing you were there for? And people that studied with me at business school, they said that literally that was their dream, to become a CEO or to become a member of the management board. And now we are changing this kind of dynamic in just changing a perspective. So we look at it at, okay, what do I really want to get out of it? And it often goes back to, how do I want to feel? And we also see now trends in terms of, you know, I know people, they're not even 20 yet, and they're already in somewhat like a midlife crisis in terms of, what do I want from life? Why am I here? So this is all, you know, it's starting earlier now. And it's not just that you're, you know, your manager, you're getting to your midlife crisis in your 50s and then you're buying your Harley Davidson or going world travel. It's all happening now earlier. So the urgency is also getting bigger. And
I think there's a lot of pressure. I have some very young clients and coaches, and the pressure they are in, which I feel as well working with them, is so the insecurity, the pressure, and the overwhelmingness of information. And this is I always feel like I want to protect them and I want to make sure that they have a stable, that they know that they are whole. That's what you mentioned. They are good as they are. That's the belief we have as systemic coaches, that you are whole already and you have everything you need. And I think that's just such a beautiful view. And believing it yourself, it's a journey. I think it's a lifelong journey. I hope you get closer, and I want to support people to get closer to this feeling and to be kind of ready to face this complexity, because you're stable inside, stable in a way, but in a soft moving stableness. You know what I mean?
It's like more like an open
a curiosity.
That's it. But the point is also what you're saying. If we look at our world, and for example, Greta Thunberg, she did an amazing job of creating awareness about a really, really burning topic. And at the same time, what it created also, and we see it a lot in our world, in different kind of system, in politics and wherever, you have to choose a side. It's like, it's very like right and wrong, black and white. And that's, I think, is also creating a lot of pressure for a certain generation who thinks they need to carry the burden of the generations before. And the only thing you can do is really to, help them to feel compassionate and loving towards themselves. And with that also to, the people around them and the things they're doing. And that's where I think the real work is, and the real work as organizations, as leaders and managers in organizations and coaches, and I think this is really leading us in now a new generation of setting up organizations and healing organizations and our view to business.
Mm-hmm. And to wrap it up, as we're talking already an hour, Tine, I think we could go on for 5. I know why you ended up talking 5 hours with Saima. And we have to do another session. Maybe we can do that. I remember, I think it was last year in December, that I got a message from you, and you were so excited that you had kind of a breakthrough about your own purpose. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I would love for you to share how you felt when you found your purpose. How was that for you?
I get tears in my eyes now. No, but it's I've always felt somewhat like pulled in a certain direction from internal, but I couldn't put the finger on it. So it was like, some people would say it's gut feeling, it's intuition, right? And then we had this session, and we worked with Tim Kelly from the True Purpose Institute, and I had it also with the people at NRG Flow. And so this day, it was a 2-day workshop, and then I could practically put my purpose down in words. And it was so impactful, just like to, write it out, put them in words. It was like translating a feeling into words to, share language. And I mean, my purpose mission is to unify the world, and I'm doing this in breaking down boundaries to connect. And it's a lot about, integration of different perspectives, inclusion. And it was funny because when I had this in words, I felt so connected. I felt so warm, and it was very emotional, because I rejected it first.
Mm-hmm.
So when I found out I rejected it, I had a very emotional reaction to it. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, it's too big, it's like, it's too big. I will never ever going to be able to handle it, I can't handle. And then it was also, you get grounded more in it. And then I went to Brazil in March, and I didn't tell people, like in Brazil, I just met about my purpose, right? And then we were in Alto Paraíso, in Chapada dos Veadeiros, and this lady, she just told me on the spot, in these words, what my purpose was. And I was looking at her, and she's like, yeah, I saw you. And I know what you're doing here, around here, And it happened twice in this time in Brazil. And I was just like, okay, I think I got there, you know, and I started to reflect, and I haven't done anything else in my life, actually, you know, no, just I do it more focused. I have more energy on it because I have it in words. So this is also, it makes it easy for me to take on roles in my projects and to say, this is my purpose. So I do roles that relate to it, obviously.
Wow, thanks for sharing that, Tine.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Your face says enough. I think it's kind of feels like glowing, and
yeah, and I mean it's evolving, right? Purpose is evolving. It's never like at the point. I think it resonates with you in the moment, and then things are happening in life again, and it makes you get a more clear path again. And so it's a beautiful process, and there's never an end to it. So it's just about, what do we need to respond to it in a way with open arms, curiosity, compassion, and love, and that's it.
I think I have nothing. I don't want to add anything. I just wanted to listen to you the whole time. I appreciate sharing your very personal last moments, and I can tell you, whoever that is, ever is going to watch, Tine is having so many beautiful people around her and is really connecting people and breaking down the boundaries, because she has so many great ideas and she puts them into action, which I admire you really, and I'm glad that I can always come back and ask you for advice, and yeah, so I really thank you a lot for sharing your journey, and yeah, I don't know, I don't want to find any good words. But yeah, you're a wonderful human being, and I'm really glad that you found an environment and people that share the same vision and the energy, and make you make you feel you, and make you encounter new skills and talents you have, and yeah, support you along the way. I think I wish everyone could have that and experience that, and not feel frustrated and not feel unhappy. Instead, feel this joy, feeling this connectiveness, and yeah,
that's
thanks
what
for
we're
sharing
here
that.
for, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sara.
I send you a big hug, and I will stop the recording now. Maybe we can say goodbye in private then.
Yes, thank you.
Wait.